At 2 in the morning, somewhere in the middle of an ocean, one person is watching a panel that most of the crew will never see. Everyone else is asleep. If something on that panel changes in the next 10 minutes, the first decision belongs to whoever is standing there. And yesterday, that same person was not allowed to touch it without somebody standing behind them. Nothing about them changed overnight. Same training, same hands, same equipment. What changed is that somebody signed something. And the entire reason a warship can run around the clock for months with a crew that is mostly very young comes down to how seriously that signature is taken. Because on a ship, qualified is not a feeling and not an opinion. It is a status. You either hold it or you do not, and the difference is not how confident you are. It is whether the system has decided you can be left alone with the consequences. Start with what the decision is not. It is not a school certificate. Plenty of people arrive aboard with excellent scores and are not allowed to stand a single watch alone for months. It is not a date on a calendar either, and it is not seniority. Time aboard makes it possible. Time aboard does not grant it, and it is not really a test in the way most people picture a test. Nobody hands you a sheet of paper and adds up how many boxes you mark correctly. The question the system is asking is a different one, and once you hear it, everything else about the process makes sense. The question is not, do you know this? The question is, can you be left alone with this at 3 in the morning, tired, when it does something you have never seen it do? Those are not the same question. A great many people can answer the first one perfectly and are nowhere near ready for the second. So the process is built to answer the second one. It starts with a book, not a textbook, a list. Every valve you must be able to find by hand. Every switch, every alarm, every step of every procedure, every casualty the equipment can throw at you, broken into separate lines. And every one of those lines has to be signed off by a person. Not by a school, not by an office ashore. A specific individual, already qualified, who stood there and watched you do the thing, and then put their name next to yours. That detail carries more weight than it looks like it does. The person signing is not a neutral examiner passing through. They live on the ship. They stand watches on the same equipment. And if you turn out to be somebody who should not have been signed off, the crew knows exactly whose name is on the line. Which is why the signature is not easy to get. People are not stingy with it out of cruelty. They are stingy with it because their own reputation on a ship where everyone knows everyone is attached to whether you can actually do what the paper says you can do. And the way they check is almost always the same 2 words. Show me, not explain it, not tell me what the manual says. Put your hand on it. Walk me through the system from where it starts to where it ends and name every piece of it out loud as you go. There is a reason for that. Talking about a system and touching a system use different parts of your memory. Under pressure, in a dark space, with an alarm going, the part that recites paragraphs is the first part to go quiet. The part that has physically traced the line with a hand keeps working. And notice what they ask about first. Not normal operation. Anyone can learn normal operation. They ask what happens when it fails. What the first indication looks like. What you do in the first 30 seconds. What you do not do, because doing it would make everything worse. Then they ask the question people underestimate. Who do you call? Not as an afterthought, as part of the answer. A watchstander who can diagnose a problem perfectly and does not know at what moment to pick up the phone is not qualified. That is not harshness. That is the actual job. Alongside the book runs the other half, and it takes longer. You stand the watch with somebody behind you. You do everything. You touch everything. You make every log entry. You answer every call, and you decide nothing. The person behind you is the one who is actually qualified. You are borrowing their status. And a good one does something that looks strange from outside. They let you get it wrong. Small things, controlled things, in situations where wrong costs nothing but a few minutes. They stand there with their hands behind their back and let you walk into it, because a mistake you made yourself is remembered 10 times longer than a mistake you were warned about. Subscribe. Then at the end, you sit in front of a small group of people whose entire job for the next hour is to find the edge of what you know. Not to fail you, to locate the exact point where your understanding stops. Because everybody has one, and the system needs to know where yours is. So they keep asking past the point where you are comfortable. on purpose. The questions get narrower and stranger until you run out of answer. That is not a trap and it is not a trick. It is the actual measurement, and the interesting part is what they are measuring. Because what happens when you hit the end of your knowledge matters more than where the end is. Say, I don't know, and here is how I would find out, and here is who I would call before I touched anything, and you have just given the best answer available. Guess confidently, and you have given the worst one. And when they finally sign, it is worth being clear about what that signature actually does. It does not reward you. It transfers risk. Yesterday, if you did something wrong, someone standing behind you would have caught it. Starting tomorrow, nobody is standing behind you. Which explains a pattern that frustrates almost everybody who goes through it. The qualification tends to arrive later than the person feels ready, sometimes considerably later. And that delay is not administrative slowness, it is deliberate, and it is aimed at something specific. There is a window every learner passes through where they know enough to act and not yet enough to doubt. Everything has worked so far. Nothing has surprised them yet. That is the most dangerous a person is ever going to be at that job. And it feels, from the inside, exactly like being ready. The system waits that window out. It wants to see you handle a night where the equipment does something unexpected, or a watch where you were wrong about something and found out. Not because suffering is educational, but because doubt is a tool, and you have to have built one before they leave you alone with the pain. And ultimately, the decision is not about you. It is about the several thousand people asleep in bunks who have no vote in the matter, no way to check your work, and no way off the ship. They are not trusting you personally. They are trusting the process that put you there. It is also worth saying what standing watch alone actually means, because the word alone does a lot of work in that phrase. You are not without help. There are phones, there is a chain of people awake elsewhere on the ship, and there is always someone senior who can be woken up. What alone means is that the first decision is yours. The first 30 seconds belong to you. Whatever you do in that window happens before anyone else even knows there is a window. Everything after that is somebody else's help arriving at a situation you already shaped, which is why permission to wake people up is part of the qualification, not separate from it. A watchstander who is afraid of looking foolish will sit on a problem for 20 minutes, hoping it resolves and turns something small into something expensive. That fear is more dangerous than most of the equipment. So the standard gets said out loud over and over until it sticks. If you are not sure, call. Nobody has ever been disciplined for waking somebody up over nothing. It sounds like a soft rule. It is actually one of the hardest rules on the ship to enforce because it runs against everything a young person wants to prove. The status also does not last forever. Stay off the watch bill long enough and it goes away. Not as punishment, but as arithmetic. Skills that live in your hands fade at a measurable rate, and the system would rather re-verify a competent person than assume a rusty one is fine. Change ships and it can go away entirely. Same job title, same equipment on paper, and you start the process again. Because the layout is different, the local habits are different, and most of all, nobody aboard this ship has personally watched you do anything yet. That last part is the whole system in one sentence. The paperwork is portable. The trust is not. Trust is built by specific people watching you with their own eyes. And it does not transfer just because a folder followed you across a pier. Now the other direction, what happens on a ship that hands the status out faster than it should? And ships do, not from corruption, but from arithmetic. Not enough qualified people, too many watches to fill, and every signature saves somebody 12 hours of standing and extra rotation. When that starts, nothing looks different. The book gets signed, the board gets held, the names go on the watch bill, the watches get stood, the logs get filled out neatly, and every entry in them is true. From any distance at all, that ship looks exactly like a ship that is doing it properly. The difference shows up in one place only. The first time something unusual happens. Normal operation hides everything. A watchstander who was qualified too early runs a perfectly good watch for weeks and then meets a situation nobody walked them through. In the first 30 seconds go badly. There is an earlier warning sign, and it is behavioral. People start checking behind the qualified watch standard. Nobody announces it. The oncoming watch shows up 10 minutes early and walks the spaces themselves. A senior sailor happens to have business nearby at exactly the wrong hour, every night. That quiet double-checking is expensive in a way that never appears in any report. It burns the time and sleep of the most experienced people aboard, which is the one resource a ship cannot manufacture. And it tells you the qualification has stopped meaning anything, months before any incident does. On a ship where it works, the opposite is true and it is almost invisible. The oncoming watch arrives, gets the turnover, and the off-going watch goes to bed and actually sleeps. That is the entire visible payoff for a process that takes months. Somebody sleeps soundly. And the moment it happens is famously unremarkable. No ceremony, no announcement. Somebody hands you back your book with the last signature in it, says a few words that take under 10 seconds, and walks away. That night you stand the same watch you have stood 40 times. The only difference is that the person who used to stand behind you is not there. And every one of those people on that first night alone is quietly hoping the same thing does not happen. Not a mechanical failure, not a navigation problem. Fire. Because a fire on a ship is the one emergency where there is nowhere to run, no fire department coming and no exit. The crew is the fire department. So next time, we are going to look at exactly that. How sailors put out a fire on a ship they cannot leave.
Forward to starboard, down and aft to port. All